Superpowers in horror fiction are often metaphor. Superpowers could be a way to express Will's coming out arc. He may have latent powers waiting to be unleashed that are held in check because he's withholding who he is. His powers are in the closet. Ronald off the record. That was a clip from a video I made in July where I predicted not only that Will would be gaining powers this season, but also why he should and how he would. I'm also known as the Byler lawyer. Byler refers to the romantic possibility between Mike and Will, and I'm a lawyer who has made long-form videos presenting evidence that the show has prepared Byler for the last season. In this video, I will argue that Will will probably have a villain arc this season and that Byler will happen. And I will update my Bylermeter, my calculation of how likely it is that Byler will happen at the end. First, let me introduce myself. I am Ronald off the record. I am a lawyer with the civil rights group BAM, By Any Means Necessary. I make videos on entertainment I enjoy. I try to bring analysis and heart to the conversation. Check out my channel and also subscribe because every week I'll be putting out a new reaction and analysis of each episode of the new season of Stranger Things, where I not only react but also theorize and predict what's to come. I'll first talk about how will probably have a villain arc this season. If you're here strictly for my Byler takes, go to the timestamp on the screen. I first put out this theory on June 1st in response to the teaser released with the infamous clip of Will yelling, "Run!" That was all I based my theory on, but now having watched Volume 1, I now think it is quite likely. All the reactors I've seen have, of course, universally celebrated Will's discovery of powers, but I've not seen other creators comment on what likely will happen next. Not all is sunny. Here are my arguments. I have to think that Vecna is not an idiot. Otherwise, he'd seriously be one of the most disappointing villains of all time, letting so many of his main enemies live. He has a plan. In the first 5 minutes of the season, he talked about the beautiful things that he and Will would do together. And when he taunted Will in the last episode, he described Will as a vessel. Next, Vecna didn't kill Will when he could have. Okay, sure, there's plot armor in this show, but when you add it all up, you have to wonder. If you think about it, Will hasn't really advanced Vecna's agenda throughout the series before now. I refuse to believe that Vecna's years-long plan has no other unrevealed use for Will, and I think his usefulness is to come. Next, Will has been compared to a sorcerer, and as much as it pains me to refer to the 2024 edition of Dungeons & Dragons, look at the books on my wall, I'm a huge tabletop role-playing game nerd. That is what this show is based off of, and that is what Mike compares Will to. The sorcerer's magic is innate, it's in their blood, or from exposure to another dimension, all completely on theme for Will, and a sorcerer has to harness and channel that magic within them, suggesting that there's difficulty involved in controlling it. Also, Will's powers are derived from his connection to an evil hive mind, like duh. Snapping limbs is cool and all, but the fact that Will can do exactly what Vecna does should be unsettling. In supernatural stories, it's common for practitioners of dark magic to be corrupted by it. We also get foreshadowing of a possible villain arc for Will in these lines of dialogue.
Some minds, it turns out, simply do not belong in this world. They belong in mine.
You're trying to say that I'm evil and hell-bent on destroying the world? Totally.
Also, when the party is planning the next crawl, they hunt for Vecna in Sector G1, and we have this shot later in the same episode where Will's face is precisely in Sector G1, suggesting that Will is Vecna and or the person they should be concerned about. And suggesting one terrifying possibility, there's this thing Mike says to Holly. During his pep talk, he describes Mike the Brave fighting certain enemies.
Basically, he explores these underground worlds where he fights monsters and evil wizards and sorcerers and stuff.
This show establishes that Vecna is a wizard, and that our sorcerer is do I need to say? Will Will the sorcerer be pitted against Mike the Brave? And then we have that shot from an early trailer where Will is yelling, "Run!" It looks like he's trying to hold back evil, and he's warning his friends to run away from something unseen by them, but Will can somehow see it, and maybe that danger he sees is himself. Lastly, Will is clearly barely holding on when he's using his powers in the end of Sorcerer. This is not a good guy face. In fact, this looks a little bit like his expression in the trailer clip we just saw, in which he was decidedly not in control. But didn't Will just have a breakthrough in controlling the hive mind? First of all that's established for now is that Will can momentarily control and kill 3 demogorgons. But Vecna was distracted. He had gotten his 12 kids, he thought his mission was done, and honestly, he didn't expect Will to be able to do what he did. But now he knows. It's not at all established that Will can overcome Vecna in a head-to-head duel when Vecna is fully committed to it. Also, what if Will is a sleeper agent for Vecna who can be activated at any time, who, moreover, can use Vecna's powers? At minimum, Vecna now sees that Will is the #1 obstacle to his plans and is likely going to try to neutralize him or somehow make him useful to Vecna. When Volume 2 begins, maybe Vecna fully focuses his attention on Will. When the sun rises, it's Vecna's big day, November 6th. Perhaps he regains control of the hive mind, possesses Will, or attacks him. Maybe he knocks him out. In this still from one of the trailers, we see that Will is unconscious, wearing the same shoes he wore that night. They're at the radio station, and Mike and Joyce look worried. The other reason not to rest on our laurels is that there are 4 episodes left, not 1. It's unlikely with this much time left in the season, with Will being the main protagonist, that his coming out and self-realization arc is over. We're obviously not looking at an uninterrupted upward arrow where Will gets more powerful and kicks Vecna's ass. Did you think this was going to be over? So soon, William? Wahaha! In the middle of season 4, Max had a breakthrough and decided to live, but she still felt guilt in the finale episode and Vecna was able to prey on her. For Will, coming out is a process. Those feelings of self-hate and worthlessness don't simply go away. For all we know, he just had a surge of power because he saw his friends were about to die. And he might not be able to repeat it again with Vecna on his ass. And what if Vecna torments Will with memories, which we're almost sure he's going to do, given that this shot is in a trailer? Vecna is a manipulator who can get in people's heads. Will doesn't remember the first 5 minutes, apparently. It likely will be revealed to him what we as viewers learn in the first 5 minutes, that Will has been key to advancing Vecna's plans. The last episode established that Max could walk through, or be made to walk through, the memories of Vecna watching Max once he decided to start stalking her. One scenario is Will being in Kamazoth somehow and being walked through the memories of what Vecna did to him in the past. He might also be forced to recall possibly buried memories of abuse at the hands of his horrible father, Lonnie. Or possibly something worse. Will might, in a possessed state this season, harm people he loves. What if the build-up this season of Will's relationship with Robin is building up towards Will harming her in some horrible way, or harming Jonathan, or Joyce, or Mike? Someone in my comments raised a valid concern that Will having a villain arc might further the depraved homosexual trope. For decades, Hollywood portrayed gay people only as people to fear, or as villains. In this case, I'm not worried about this trope being advanced, however, because Will's good character is already established, and it would clearly be against his will. Another reason why I think we'll see a villain arc with Will is the statement from his actor Noah Schnapp, where he describes what Will emotionally goes through this season.
But he is connected to Vecna in a way that we haven't seen before. He struggles with that monster inside of him. This guilt of, like, am I evil? Am I the monster? Am I responsible for all these things?
A villain arc for Will, of course, leads to a painful decision. Do the good guys, the party, need to kill Will to prevail? It may very well come up, and another reason why I think there'll be a villain arc is that there is an artifact in Dungeons & Dragons which supports this villain arc and also this painful decision being forced upon the group. We'll look at this artifact in a second, but I want to point out that there has been repeated eye imagery so far this season. We have this promotional poster for Season 5 showing Vecna lacking one of his eyes. The D&D artifact involves someone getting one of Vecna's eyes and putting it in their own socket. We also have this shot from the beginning of the season, which looks like an eye. And we had a fast zoom in into Will's eye that cuts to a tunnel that looked like an eye. So the eye of Vecna. Clearly it's relevant because it says Vecna. Plus, it gives the bearer some of Vecna's powers, including the power of true sight, which Season 2 established Will does have. It also serves the idea that Will is Vecna's spy. And this artifact also makes the person evil, and if you try to remove it, you die. I doubt Will replace his own eye this season, but I think this artifact will be used to explain what's going on with Will. Vecna can thrive on Will's deep sense that he's a mistake, not worthy of love, and that the world is better off without him. If you were Vecna and you saw that the main obstacle to your plans had these weaknesses, wouldn't you exploit them? Wouldn't you manipulate Will to make him think he's a mistake, to weaken his resistance, to take away his control over himself and or the hive mind? It's established that Will is prepared to sacrifice himself for everyone else. In Season 2, he told everyone to close the gate, to kill everything attached to the hive mind, which would have killed himself. His selflessness, while commendable and heroic, is also rooted in thinking too little of himself due to what he's experienced in his life. This might be resolved by a certain love confession, but I'll get to that later. I'm fairly confident in my prediction that Will needing to die will seem necessary for the good guys to win, and that Will will offer himself for that purpose. It would be an earned death scare that the show will have developed. It would be Will's ultimate act of love. Of course, I think it would be limited to a death scare or even a fake-out death, because this would be the worst instance of bury your gays of all time, which I've talked about before. Finally, in my Will Gains Powers video, I talked about Will and Vecna being foils. There's a common trope in supernatural stories like this of two people who came from similar circumstances making different choices with their lives. The evil nihilistic one that wants to destroy the world that wronged them, or the good path that our hero chooses. We've seen this with Harry Potter and Voldemort, with Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader, the list goes on. This video went over the many ways Will's life paralyzed that of Vecna's. There are even parallels in their outfit choices, and in the flashback sequence in Sorcerer, we see a young Will wearing similar clothes as a young Henry. This show might explore themes of trauma and abuse and how people make different decisions coming out of it. And exposure to an alternate dimension would be a metaphor for this. Additionally, Will had an abusive father and was subjected to societal abuse for being perceived as gay. The shot of Henry being afraid to follow Max into the cave is very evocative of how a scared, traumatized boy would act. Having now read the synopsis of the stage play The First Shadow, which is canon, I now think that this cave would have been where a young Henry got exposed to Dimension X and gained his powers. However, Henry's response and his fear of that cave is a clear reference to child abuse and trauma. It's common for survivors of abuse to have a fraught relationship with power. They've only seen power be abused. And so they find themselves refusing to assert power themselves, even when it makes sense, because their biggest fear is becoming just like their abuser, becoming a monster. We've seen this dilemma play out with Elle.
This guilt of, like, am I evil? Am I the monster?
And so, for example, Will stands up for himself against Joyce. Sure, he lost his temper a bit, but it was a heated conversation. He was still holding back the full extent of his anger, and overall, he was in the right. He was right to do this. But he feels terrible about doing this right thing later and bends over backwards in apologizing to his mom. Will's supernatural power is a metaphor exploring the theme of someone who has survived trauma and abuse, learning how to wield power in their own life. One thing a villain arc would do is force Will to go through the horror of seeing his power harming others or almost harm others, or be made to believe it has, making him feel guilt and shame that Vecna wants him to feel that he absolutely would take advantage of. And Will would then learn that power per se doesn't make it evil, but it's how you wield it and whether you direct your power towards good. Alright, so what are the chances that Will have a villain arc this season? I put it at 80%. With every episode reaction and analysis I have, I'm going to adjust this meter as appropriate. Alright, let's talk about Byler. It's what I'm known for. I've made now 8 hours of theory video about it, and a lot of people have been commenting wanting my take on Volume 1. At the end of my Episode 3 reaction, I had my Bylermeter, my chances that Mike and Will get together by the end of the series, at 88%. So where is it at now? I will go through things I saw in Volume 1 and update my meter. First, I want to address skeptics of the Byler ship briefly. If you are not convinced yet that Byler is a possibility, the place to start is my first video, which is aimed at people who are not convinced yet. In that and the second video, I have compiled what I believe is an impressive list of exhibits. Byler has 100% been prepared. It would be the more powerful and far better story, and it is consistent with Mike, Will, and Elle's character arcs. Given how much the show has prepared a Byler endgame and the huge fandom that has gathered around this ship, not delivering would 100% be queerbait. Some people might think, what? We just had a gay empowerment arc where Will accepted his gay identity after bonding with another queer character. Some would argue that Robin's speech was telling Will and audience members to give up on Mike and to gently let down Bylers. However, if the creators wanted to gently let down Byler, then the thing to do would be to rip off the Band-Aid. Do what the creators of Wednesday did a few months ago and dispel speculation, announce that the ship is not going to happen, which, given the popularity of Byler and how much evidence there was when season 4 came out 3.5 years ago, the creators of Stranger Things should have done this then. The Duffer Brothers should have dispelled rumors before season 5 started, just as they dispelled the rumor that Eddie Munson would return. And there's a lot more people clamoring and sincerely believing Byler will happen than ever believed Eddie would return. They still haven't dismissed the biggest thing that queer and queer-friendly people have been theorizing about for years. Instead, they fanned the flames in Volume 1, as we will soon see. Byler would be groundbreaking representation. Straight people have stirring love stories against all odds all the time. We deserve those stories too. For the skeptics, and as a preview for what you will see in my Byler videos, I go over what I call the top 6 Byler bangers, really quickly. Number 1, think about if Will were a girl, and how you would assess Mike and Will's relationship. Number 2, in the season 4 finale, Elle makes this drawing on a van, which pairs Mike and Will in a circle, and Elle by herself. Number 3, this show has used the Cyrano trope, where Will confessed his love by giving a painting and giving credit to Elle, and describing his own feelings for Mike, but ascribing them to Elle. And Mike, in turn, confessed love to an idea of Elle, who was actually Will. Number 4, the last scene of season 4 has Mike and Will standing together in a field, just as the other canon couples are, Joyce and Hopper, and Jonathan and Nancy. Moments after Elle looks at wilted yellow and purple flowers that look exactly like the ones that Mike presented to her at the airport at the start of the season, a set of blooming flowers appear in front of Mike and Will magically, out of nowhere, and blue and yellow are the official colors of the Byler fandom. Number 5, Will's actor, Noah Schnapp, made this statement at a fan convention. He was asked what might happen with Mike and Will's relationship going into season 5.
You guys can't get me in trouble. I don't want to say anything. Spoiler. Okay. I feel you could tell right from the beginning Mike and Will were like a pair, and you could never really tell if it was like something romantic or just like a really special friendship.
Admitting that Mike and Will are romantic coded from the start of the series. And number 6, writers don't write slow burn rejections, which is said best at the end of my first Byler video by a blogger named Byler Nation. Unrequited love stories occur in fiction, but they are resolved quickly, like Dustin and Max and Steve and Robin. You don't build up over time what seems like a slow burn romance, complete with miscommunication and, in this case, the painting lie, building up to a grand reckoning of some sort, only to find out what viewers already knew. This will be another long video, as is my wont, and so here's an outline with timestamps of what I'll cover. First, some general points, then exhibits of Byler from Volume 1, predictions that I have for Byler, update my Bylermeter, and a closing argument. On to some general thoughts I had about the likelihood of Byler that I was thinking about when trying to figure out where my Bylermeter will end up next. First, there isn't much more that needs to happen, and there don't need to be many boxes checked off my Byler bingo card to set up Byler. I admit to some Byler doubt and anxiety watching Volume 1. I expected it to play out like most slow burn romantic stories, where you make clear that the boy and the girl like each other, so that you can have an extended period where the audience is tortured as you drag it out, and they wonder, will they or won't they? When in reality, they know all the time that they will. There have been seeds planted, but they haven't been noticed by the majority of the general audience, because Will isn't a girl, and heteronormativity is at play. If Byler is happening, I thought that something more overt showing Mike likes Will back would have happened in Volume 1. Something seen by most discerning viewers, so they can devour Byler theory videos like some of mine between now and Volume 2, and share them with their friends. I thought it was necessary to acclimate the audience to let a lot of them know that there is a mountain of evidence for them to accept a gay twist. We did not have such an overt sign, and many of the boxes on my bingo card were not checked off. But as I said earlier, it doesn't take much to get the audience to accept Byler. There only need to be a few things that happen, and so long as they're properly set up, then people will want what the characters want. If Byler happens, then the Duffer Brothers are showing more faith in the audience accepting a gay romance twist than I expected. And I think I now agree with them. I don't think it's necessary for the audience to be convinced that something will happen before it happens. Nearly everyone who watched The Sixth Sense didn't know the plot twist that was coming until after it happened. All that mattered is that it makes sense to people in retrospect. And as I say in my 16 ways to make Byler happen video, there are many ways to do that. And I guess you could say I also underestimated the Duffer Brothers' ego. They admire a properly set up plot twist that people don't see coming, but when it is revealed, makes total sense.
That's the trick with the good twist. Like a bad twist is you see it coming from a mile away. And a bad twist is also, there's no way I could have guessed that. I mean, that would have been impossible for me. The best twists are, how did I not see that? It was right in front of me. Like Sixth Sense is the classic example.
Volume 1 of the new season had as its big reveal the fact that Will has powers. They dare to make the biggest twist of all, yes, even bigger than Will having powers, which many suspected, Mike loving Will back for the last episodes of the season. Possibly even in a key moment in the A-plot in defeating Vecna, giving it the pimp spot. It would be more surprising and be the one that will look like, in retrospect, the one that was more carefully and systematically prepared in plain sight. The Duffer Brothers would have bragging rights that they pulled off a Sixth Sense and managed to drag it out over 10 years with the power of heteronormativity. Who else can claim to do that? And if the Duffers pull it off, then no one else will be able to pull it off again because everyone would be comparing it to what the Duffer Brothers did. Also, I have to admit that the conventional way to have a slow burn romance is conventional and trite. The culmination happens after the audience already knows the final outcome. And what fun is that? If you want to have the biggest emotional impact with Byler, you want the moment the audience realizes and the reveal itself to be at the same time. And honestly, having Byler reveal itself in a confession during a climactic moment in the A-plot was my earliest theories. It might even be the climactic moment of the season. Will is the main character this season after all. It could happen in the last few minutes of Volume 2 or in the finale itself. They might even have planned for the general audience to devour Byler theory video content to take place between Volume 2 and the finale, rather than between now and Volume 2, which I originally thought. And if Byler happens, honestly, I think it's kind of cooler that they gave it the pimp spot and had it be part of the climax of the series. So the Duffer Brothers missed their chance to clue in a bunch of people about Byler during Volume 1. Or did they? It's because it appears that there's greater interest in Byler than ever before. On the screen is a graph from Google Trends showing how many searches have been made for Byler over the last 5 years. This first peak is when Season 4 released, and that was released in 2 volumes. And when Volume 1 released, the index was 31. And now, the index is 100. It's the highest it's ever been. More than 3 times as much interest in Byler now than when Volume 1 of Season 4 released. Now, why is that? Well, for people who have not been in the Byler bubble for a while and don't have hugely high expectations, this first volume did a number of things generating interest. First, Will and Mike had glow-ups. They both look like leading men. They've maintained the love triangle. Will has not moved on from Mike, and he's flirting. Mike and Elle did not kiss in their conversation, and they had that ominous exchange where Mike said,
Vecna's gone, then what's stopping us?
Unlike Season 4, Mike is not focused on Elle this season. For many people, years have passed since they saw the last season. They probably don't remember Mike and Elle very much. They probably just remember, oh, he had trouble saying he loved her and he gave that kind of cliche confession at the end of the season. But many don't remember, and those who do probably were not jumping for joy and pumping their fists for the reasons I've covered in my videos. Speculation about Mike and Will has probably seen a huge increase since Will was clued in on what signs to look for to find out if Mike likes him. There was definite chemistry between Mike and Will during the conversation in the field, and Mike was key to Will's turning point this season in more ways than one, which I'll go over. So in a sense, the Duffer Brothers did prime people for Byler in Volume 1. I just overestimated how many and how overt the clues would be, but I underestimated the impact what they put out would have. Now I'm about to get to the new exhibits, but I need to address one thing that's going to come up from Byler's in my comment section that I need to address. It isn't 100% clear that Mike and Elle are still in a relationship when season 5 starts, and I'm calling this time skip gate. There appears to be the prevailing opinion among Byler fans, and I imagine the majority think this, that they have broken up already. They don't kiss here. Their conversation is compatible with being platonic friends. Mike talked about the party retiring in a village with 3 waterfalls, referring to everybody, including the core 4 boys. Many say that Elle's reference to us having a happy ending was about the party. And of course, at the end of season 4, Malevolent, as I've argued in my videos, was on a flimsy foundation. Mike's confession was based on the painting lie, had contradictions in it, and of course we have Elle's overall independence arc. Also, Will feels he can openly flirt with Mike this season, which the Will we know from the end of season 4 wouldn't have done. He wouldn't have flirted with someone else's boy. And note that when he talked to Robin in the hospital, he didn't ask, how do you know if someone's gay? He asked,
How did you know that Vicky wanted to
make out?
To date?
Oh.
So Will has thought things through so much that he's thought of having dates with Mike. These are all very good arguments for time skip gate. However, I still veer towards Mike and Elle still being together. Lucas did call them lovebirds, and they are having a healthy conversation, which, okay, some might argue that's probably proof that they've broken up because they've only had healthy conversations before when they were platonic. But still, it was a healthy conversation, which conventionally means they are still together. And there's the basic fact of being young, still learning about the world. They mean a lot to each other and interpreting that as romantic love. But for me, the main reason I think they're still officially together is the fact that if they were to break up, you want that to happen and the things leading up to that to happen on screen. And what better way to make their feelings come to the surface than through the current storylines? Will getting powers, Will being in danger, and firing the Chekhov's gun and revealing the painting line now. And for me, the tiebreaker is the sunset imagery. It bathes them in romantic light, and it symbolizes that their relationship is ending soon. You need to have a relationship to end. Add to that what I'm calling a romance death flag, where I believe Elle refers to the two of them. Will they have a happy ending? And Mike says his ominous, well, with Vecna gone, what's stopping us? So them being together seems to be the most straightforward answer. And of course, I think that their breakup, eventual breakup, will be amicable and everyone will understand it's best for everyone involved. And besides, and this is the main point I think I want to say to Bylers, you don't need them to be broken up already for Byler to happen. Either way, Mike would still need to have a set of realizations and you want them to happen on screen. And honestly, I kind of like the fact that Will flirted with Mike, knowing that Mike was still with Elle. He may have been acting on Robin's advice and testing the waters. And it wasn't that much anyway. And second, that boy's been too selfless for too long. And the idea that another girl, in this case a gay boy, would steal my man feeds harmful stereotypes and leaves the boy off the hook. Because in the end, it's the person in the middle, it's his choice. And if Mike genuinely loves Will back, and his relationship with Elle isn't good for either of them, then how bad is it really to flirt with Mike? Mike and Elle might both want to break up when they do break up. And isn't it kind of fair to Mike to know he has a choice? And how wrong is Will being when you step back and realize that the only reason Mike and Elle are together is because Will sacrificed his feelings and told a lie. Elle is with Mike because Will made it so. Hard to call Will a homewrecker when he built the damn house. Anyway, I think they're still together, but on the other hand, if I'm proven wrong, I'll be happy for that too. All right, on to the exhibits finally. First, a caveat, my thoughts are my own. I've avoided spoilers and also other people's theories. It improves my own enjoyment, and I think you guys will appreciate my theories if you know that I wasn't influenced in coming up with them. And if I match what other people say, then it provides independent confirmation. There are a few things I did pick up from other people, and I'll indicate that when it's true. But it also means I'm almost certainly behind the Tumblr Byler hive mind when it comes to theorizing, the epicenter of the Byler fandom and the petri dish for Byler theory. Anyway, I hope I'm close enough. Okay, on to the exhibits. Exhibit U. Mike and Elle are diverging, while Mike and Will inspire each other to be heroes. In Byler Part 1, I talked about how Mike and Elle's character arcs were diverging. Mike expresses insecurity being in a romantic relationship with Elle, feeling like a nobody and a random nerd, and not wanting to be a Lois Lane next to a Superman. Meanwhile, Elle is learning how to be independent and not dependent on others for validation. She doesn't want to be seen as a superhero. She just wants to be herself, a normal girl, and live a normal life. Mike's love confession, saying that she was his superhero, was the opposite of what both of them needed. Now in season 5, since Mike and Elle talked in that sunset, Mike has hardly thought about Elle at all. Mike's one mention of Elle was to tell Will,
And with 11 in the upside down, we really need some magic up here.
which was more about Will, honestly, than about Elle. Elle is in a hell dimension! Will, after the events of Volume 1 and gaining powers, I think is now in Vecna's sights. And I believe that past precedent controls. When Will is in danger, Protector Mike activates. Meanwhile, Elle this season is more independent than ever. She insists on going into the Upside Down, frequently challenges Hopper, and in the end enters the Upside Down and blows off Hopper when he argues with her. The show is focused on, and Elle is focused on, her evolving relationship with her adoptive dad. And she finds Callie, and what an amazing thing for Elle. Someone else who has supernatural powers like her, and so much of Elle's journey has been about feeling alone. She has always bloomed when she's been able to figure herself out with a female friend, and now she's found a real sister. And she has a superpowered brother now, and I'm hoping for some superpower sibling bonding between the two of them. And aren't we building up to a big super sibling battle with Vecna? Elle has always been about finding the friends and family she was denied growing up because she was raised in a lab. Her needing Mike as a substitute for that was so last season. Meanwhile, Mike is coming into his own while not with Elle this season. He's no longer the insecure wet rag constantly thinking about Elle throughout season 4. He's more confident, giving leadership to the core 4. In the big battle at the end of Sorcerer, he's cool and collected, working to lead the kids out of danger. And I'm sorry, Mike, I know Will is struggling to walk, but there are 3 children you're supposed to be helping, and Joyce is already helping Will. But still, Mike was acting like a commander to all of them, like leading a squad. It might be foreshadowing of his role in Volume 2, where he's providing similar leadership to people in Hawkins combating the Upside Down, one of my theories. This was Leader Mike, and would the insecure, I'm just a random nerd boy from Season 4 have done this? What prompted this change in Mike? Will. Will reminded Mike that he's the leader, the paladin, the heart. Mike now speaks of himself as Mike the Brave.
Mike the Brave is never scared. So, whenever I'm feeling frightened or nervous, I just imagine that he's at my side. And I feel better.
And Mike the Brave is from Will's D&D painting to Mike and his speech to Mike in the van. A painting and a set of feelings that Mike still thinks are from Elle. It's the Cyrano trope, it's the painting lie, it's Exhibit M. The Chekhov's gun that has yet to fire and is more relevant now than ever. Mike and Elle's lack of focus on each other and their character growth away from each other has already had a subtle effect on the general audience, who are just not that devoted to the romantic future. And we have this line from Elle to Mike in one of the trailers.
This isn't like one of your campaigns. You don't get to write the ending, not this time.
However, Mike being a dungeon master, being a leader, being a dreamer, his imagining himself as Mike the Brave and Will as the Sorcerer saved the day. As I've said before, yes, these two, Mike and Elle, do love each other and mean a lot to each other, but Elle doesn't appreciate and love Mike for his unique qualities. But Will, who made a D&D painting for Mike that portrays him as the leader he wants to be and is, sees and loves Mike for exactly who he is and brings out the best in him. My next point for this is definitely not in universe. It's a statement from Noah Schnapp, Will's actor. It's him spilling the fact that most of the scenes he did this season were with Finn Wolfhard, the actor for Mike.
I wanted to ask you what your favorite moments with Finn on set were.
Well, I would probably say from this new season.
Yeah.
So I guess I can't tell you. But from other seasons, what I've realized actually is that I think have spent the most time with Finn throughout the course of sorry, I gotta not make a picture of the same thing for season 5, but in other seasons, what was the question?
What was the...
So, if you consider that, in Volume 1, Mike and Will had only one one-on-one scene together. At least one where they could actually talk. And Will had many scenes throughout Volume 1. So, mathematically, for Noah's statement to be true, they have a lot of making up to do, and we're about to be fed with Byler scenes in the back half of the season. The end of episode 4 was literally Mike living up to how Will sees him, and Will living up to how Mike sees him. While Mike and Elle have historically held each other back, Mike and Will make each other heroes, which is the title of a David Bowie song, a song about forbidden love that this show already associates with Mike and Will, which is required viewing, by the way, if you have any interest in this ship. This dynamic between Mike and Will also makes it more likely we'll hear this song this season. Co-creator of the show, Sean Levy, has said, quote, "Our show is an anthem for the marginalized and imperfect, precisely because the Duffer Brothers know from experience that the popular and easy road is rarely the most interesting one, and that character, grit, connection, and soul are bred in the same moments that challenge us most." This show is a coming-of-age story in which young people learn not to take the conventional road, who become heroes through the strength that they derive from their bonds with each other and their love against all odds. For Elle, who already is a superhero, her arc is about finding her own place in the world. For Mike and Will, their arc is discovering that, when it seems the world is about to end, they can make each other fly. Exhibit V. The field scene was flirty as hell. We as viewers just came out of episode 3, which established to people with brain cells that Will is looking for signs of whether someone is romantically interested in him, including a brush of a knee, bump of an elbow, a shared look. Which is Byler evidence, by the way. Why have a conversation about signs to look for if there's not going to be a payoff in the future? As it turns out, in the field, before they even start talking to each other, there is a subtle blink and you miss it bump and shared look between these two. Still, it's easy to miss, but we also have a whole history of shared looks between these two throughout the seasons. Okay, so this conversation happens. It's just like many season 2 conversations between these two, and by the way, the creators did tell people to rewatch season 2 before watching this, saying that was the most important season, which happens to be the season these two were super close. Then, Will shares what he feels because of a supernatural connection. Then it was a viewfinder. Now it's a movie. And, like before, Mike says, well, actually, Will, you might be a superhero.
You're like a spy now. A super spy.
This is just like those scenes, except it's lit like a fucking rom-com. Just look at it. We even have audio of birds singing, and when the music comes on, it's like chimes and bells.
This scary movie you just can't turn off.
Are you positive you didn't?
Didn't what?
Turn off the scary movie. Protect your mom, not the other way around.
This is cinematography one-on-one of how you light a romantic pair, and I did a post on Tumblr a year ago about this fact, showing an article. It was about how they lit this very scene. Who else gets this romantic lighting treatment this season? Mike and Elle, and that's it. And Will is in love with Mike. This is love triangle territory, folks, and if Will were a girl, everyone would see it. And this comes right after the episode where Robin talks about what signs to look for and priming the audience to find romantic chemistry here. And as we'll see, there is sufficient evidence. When I first watched this, as you probably saw from my reaction, I was grinning like an idiot. They were flirting with each other. Everyone agrees that Will flirted with Mike, but people are divided on whether Mike flirted back. Well, how about if I tell you that Mike actually initiated the flirting? We have to never forget the important test. If Will were a girl, what would people think? And there's a lot of heteronormativity at play. I've been watching many reactors react to this scene, and most of them think that Will's love is unrequited, and some even say Will needs to give it up. When actually, Will does nothing more here than what Mike has previously done.
We're a team. Friends. Best friends.
Cool.
Cool.
And when Will had that look of realization in the hospital, when Robin said it's like a snowball becoming an avalanche, Will was thinking something, and he has lived in the same house with Mike for 18 months that we haven't seen yet. Or heck, he could be thinking about things that we've seen on our screens between these two over the last 4 seasons. I need to calm down. For us Bylers, what I'm about to point out about Mike in this scene is clear as day because it's entirely consistent with how we've seen Mike interact with Will before, a way that he never interacts with Dustin or Lucas. Mike is basically saying, "You're amazing," and Will is blushing. Will then asks, "Oh, so you think I'm evil and hell-bent on destroying the world?" Mike says, "Totally." And they're smiling throughout all of this. This is totally flirty. This is the same energy between them we've seen before.
I was being a total self-pitying idiot.
I didn't say it.
You didn't have to.
Mike describes his theory as a crazy theory and that he's had crazier. Crazy, that's a word we've heard before.
We'll go crazy together, right? Yeah. Crazy together.
Then he says, with Elle in the Upside Down, we could really use some magic up here. Pairing Elle and Will in his mind, and also using the word magic, an inherently more romantic word than powers, which Mike has never used with Elle, all while giving effusive praise. Mike was giving "you're my superhero" vibes, except this time it was natural, not forced. Will didn't initiate the flirting. He pushed Mike because Mike was praising him so much that he blushed, and if you don't see it, you don't see. Now on to Mike post-poke. He's smiling, and he holds the smile before walking away. This was the bumped elbow and shared look Robin was referring to, if you haven't already pre-decided that he's straight. We've seen this expression before in romantically charged moments. Now let's look at Mike's reaction. Okay, yes, he's walking away, and some people read this as rejection. Like, what the fuck? If this were rejection and meant to be seen as rejection, there would have been a clear expression on Mike's face of disliking it, and there wasn't. Mike is smiling twice! He likes that Will smiled and touched him, and looks kind of proud and also shy. Y'all be trippin'. People are heterohallucinating. Viewers are just misled by Will's expression and the music changing, which is reflecting Will's point of view. The show just pulled a magician's trick on people, and they fell for it. Also, didn't Will, who's canonically in love with Mike, have a moment exactly like this too?
I didn't say it.
You didn't have to.
Feeling a flirty vibe, not knowing what to do with it, being scared of it, and looking away? Was that proof Will didn't like him? I don't think so. The platonic guy thing to do if someone pushes you is to laugh and push back. They'd be joshing. This, though, looks slightly awkward. Mike smiles and shyly walks away. I could kiss you right now, so I better go. Straight people know how terrifying it is to flirt, especially when you're young, and for gay people in the closet, it's quadruply scary. And I could just speak from my own experience. You have those moments of hope, and you look away. In fact, you train yourself to look away because you don't want to be discovered. It's not just fear of rejection, but self-preservation that you discipline yourself into doing. Hell, I still look away. And for these two best friends, if they're both in love and closeted, you've trained yourself not to act in a way that risks losing your friendship. So yes, it makes sense to look away precisely because it feels too flirty. And I'm someone who fails in the flirting department, who's been told I'm oblivious when people are interested in me. So if I can see flirting here and you don't, God help you. And we have confirmation now from the table read that Mike does not know Will flirts with him here. Note the cast members' expressions when they read this part.
Your powers don't come, they're innate. As far as crazy theories go, I've had crazy. And with 11 in the Upside Down...
It's a small moment, but makes Will red with embarrassment. He feels stupid. Mike doesn't clock it, Robin does.
He didn't notice the flirt. So this also almost certainly means Mike doesn't know Will is interested in him. This is officially a love triangle, folks. Mike hasn't rejected Will yet. This is the classic romantic miscommunication trope in action, and Mike still doesn't know the truth about the painting. He thinks the only person who loves him romantically is Elle, who's actually Will. So we're gonna check off another bingo box, folks. Mike gives a romantic look to Will. Whatever you think about Byler, this scene undeniably establishes they have romantic chemistry. Just a few notes on symbolism in this scene as well. This is an interesting framing. These two tree trunks give them a smaller space, making the scene inherently intimate. And they're also phallic symbols, and if you don't like me talking about sex, you probably want to skip the rest of this video. I noticed a YouTube thumbnail that mentioned a radio tower and that radios send signals, and I thought myself of the fact that this is an electrically charged tower. Remember, that was established when Steve had to turn off the power. This show associates electricity with romantic tension.
It's like before it's gonna storm, you know? This, electricity.
She was just scared, but I could feel it, the electricity.
And the radio signals and electricity are on Mike's side. Exhibit W, Robin's speech makes Will more ready to confess his love, not less. I said in my Will Gains Powers video that if he gains powers this season, that this would parallel his coming out arc, that his powers are in the closet. And I also predicted that gay love and gay self-acceptance would save the day, and I was right. And the trigger appears to be Robin's speech to Will, and there's another, but I'll get to that. Now, why Robin's speech is important is a big debate, I'm sure, that's dividing fans on whether the show is preparing Byler or shutting it down. First, to anti-Bylers who are celebrating, thinking that Will has decided not to confess his love to Mike, that's the opposite of what happened. Will saved Mike's life, which is significant in itself, but assuming he's conscious afterward, he might explain what and who he was thinking of. Second, I want to share this clip from my post-analysis of episode 4 that my Patreon supporters have already seen, on why Robin's speech helped Will unlock his powers. They have laid down a path that looks on the surface like she's telling him that he doesn't need Mike to be out and to be himself. Sharing her own experience, and I might get emotional. And so give up on your straight bestie and find that love within yourself. This is the anti-Byler narrative. On the other hand, what she seems to really be telling him is she's looking at this this film footage of herself and realizing how unoppressed she was. She was just a child and being herself, unapologetically, fearlessly. Someone who hadn't experienced whatever you experience as you get older, specifically if you're gay, being bullied, fear of being accused of being gay. You're yourself when you're a child, seeing who that person was and committing to remain that person. And Will is, we've just been shown by the show that he is at his essence is to just be a very loving person. And I think of, I'm sad this particular flashback wasn't portrayed, maybe it'll come up, but Joyce's story of Will giving away his Tonka truck to a girl who was crying and knowing that he couldn't have a replacement because they were too poor. And just still was doing it because she was sad. That's Will. And his gay sexuality and his just being who he is, a loving person, are the same thing. They're the same thing. I don't know if Robin's film was just her by herself, but every single one of Will's memories was with people he loved. And the first one was Mike. The first two. And anyway, just to say, finding love in yourself, it sounds almost cliche. And in reality, okay, you do need to find a way to love yourself, but we're all, as human beings, we're social. We are social people. We thrive and can find love when we are loved by others. And Will, I don't know if we're going to see his past contrasted with Henry's, but Will is someone who's had loving relationships since he was young. He's had messed up relationships with his father, and the bullies, but the core was Jonathan, Mike, and Joyce, and they helped him stay who he was and be who he is. His memories were of being loved by those people and loving those people. Those were what he remembered. And in the end, it was seeing Mike, Lucas, and Robin were going to be killed that triggered his love. And love was his power and gave him power. And it's also, of course, about his accepting his gay sexuality at the same time. And anyway, I just found that moment very beautiful. And his gay sexuality is not separate from being who he is and being a loving person. Okay. What else? Here's Megan. Megan wants to sit in my lap. Maybe she sees how sad I was. Here's Megan. Here's Megan. If Byler is endgame, then the Duffer Brothers are doing something clever, akin to what they did with the van confession near the end of season 4. Then, and here, they're using the same exact scene to lay down 2 parallel tracks, one leading to Byler and one that is not. They found another way that develops Byler and also tortures us with doubt. It appears on the one hand that Robin is saying, don't hope for the unattainable straight guy to love you as a substitute for loving and accepting your gay self. She might assume Mike is straight, as many of us did, simply because Mike is dating a girl. Heteronormativity is real. But honestly, what Robin thinks here doesn't matter. Because the core of what Robin was saying to Will was to be that fearless person he was as a kid. To stop being so goddamn scared, to not hold back, to love, to fly, wherever that leads him. Just as with Elle, whose memory of her mother's love helped her once to defeat Henry, for Will, being loved and giving love unlocks his power. Will's power comes from not looking inward, but looking outward. That's what we see in the flashbacks, and they're the same stories that Mike, Joyce, and Jonathan told him in season 2 that helped him resist the possession. Those memories were Will remembering being loved by people he loves, including Mike. Robin didn't criticize herself for pining for Tammy because she was apparently straight. She only realized that later. It's that she was idealizing Tammy into someone she wasn't, and looking for acceptance of herself being gay from someone else.
Because there was always this part of me that kind of scared me, you know? But I thought that if Tammy loved me, all of me, you know, I wouldn't be so scared anymore.
And we all know Mike is no Tammy Thompson. As Steve said, Tammy was a total dud. Robin didn't see Tammy, but a pure fantasy. Meanwhile, Mike is someone Will knows through and through. He loves the real Mike, Mike the Heart, Mike the Brave, who's saved Will's life and repeatedly gone to the wall for him. Mike is no dud. In fact, the Tammy story is more resonant with Mike and Elle in terms of how they look at each other, but that's a whole other conversation. Still, Robin's speech speaks to Will because of what Robin senses. Will's still suffering from that loneliness and looking for acceptance of being gay from someone else. That's a common experience for young gay people where you're so infatuated with a potential love interest because here's the one person in the whole world who can love you for being you and all of you. But you could be setting yourself up for a big fall, and even if you get together, you're not dealing with the real issue. By the way, this is a universal message of something to avoid. It's not just true for gay people. It's just especially intense for gay people who are not out to anyone. Yearning for a Tammy or a Mike isn't a substitute for accepting and coming out to yourself. And I think this is a responsible message that the Duffer Brothers are sending. And honestly, a scenario I've spelled out, one where Mike's love for me makes me realize I'm worthy of love, would have sent a problematic message, a mixed message at best, in the absence of doing this first. And what does Will have to inevitably conclude from Robin's experience? That she found herself a Vicky. Although she's not an out lesbian, completely understandable in a 1980s small town, she, insisting on being her quirky, unique, lovable self, meant that she could find a like-minded and compatible person in Vicky, and having the confidence to make a move on her at the end of season 4. And I have to add here that if Robin's advice actually were what anti-Bylers think it is, to give up on that unattainable straight person, then she would have never gotten together with Vicky, who was dating a boy. And of course, Robin is hosting her own radio show, being her unique self to thousands of people, and being joyful. The core of Robin's message wasn't to move on from Mike. Loving yourself doesn't mean don't get your boy. In fact, if Robin were to learn that Will hit on Mike and Mike didn't like him back, she'd be proud of Will and think that he was following her advice because Will would be flying. Many people will see Robin's speech and get this wrong. This is a story about a gay boy asserting his right to love. Will has already come so far since season 4. Back when he consigned himself to gay hell and thought that his love for Mike was wrong, he's now flirting with Mike and daring to hope that Mike returns the feelings. Now Robin has helped him resolve to not be so goddamn scared. Objectively, he's now more likely to show his love for Mike, not less, knowing that his love for Mike is beautiful and not to be ashamed of. Because it's love, goddammit, and what's so wrong about that? And I just gotta say, if you're in love with a friend, maybe you should confess your love to them. The decision is different for everyone, but there's nothing wrong with your feelings. And a true friend would accept that part of you that's good and beautiful. Part of coming out is actually feeling like you deserve love and daring to try to find it. And Will now has Robin's checklist of things to look for, and which was shown to us, the audience, for a reason. And I'd like to point out that there's a political problem as well if the Duffer Brothers decide to equate Will's self-acceptance arc with deciding not to continue to pursue Mike. It would fail to make a frank, honest, and empowering portrayal of a gay coming of age, and betray the theme of Will overcoming his trauma and abuse by acting on his right to pursue happiness and love. It would limit the portrayal of gay sexuality to what is considered safe and acceptable to the straight majority. Telling LGBT plus people to, quote, find love within themselves and not do what straight people feel entitled to do, pursue potential romantic partners, would be condescending and infantilizing. It's what the anti-Bylers want this show to be setting up, but I don't think that's what the Duffers are setting up. The Duffer Brothers, of course, are not simply telling a tale of gay tragedy. And I don't think they're also telling a tale simply of internal self-acceptance, but of gay empowerment. Because Will's gay self-acceptance literally gives him power. What's been his source of shame for his whole life is his source of strength. We've seen rainbow imagery this season everywhere, but that's not the only gay imagery we've seen. We've also seen fire. You all have heard the phrase flaming gay guy or flaming queen. Fire seems to be used not simply to show the power of love, but the power of gay. And we also see a drastic change in Will's look in just this one scene. Before his turn, he looks like a scared little boy. And I've written about this on my blog about how there was a deliberate choice for him to have the stupid bowl cut for 4 whole seasons. And also there was behind the scenes talk about how Will's actor had filled out some during season 4 and they deliberately hid his arms, including having him wear layers in the fucking desert. Now they're emphasizing Will's physique and his being a young man. They're tying Will's coming out arc to his finding his gay sexuality, expressing his sexuality and masculinity, and expressing power through all of this. And there are countless stories, especially in the superhero genre, that are heterosexual male fantasies, where superpowers represent puberty and entering manhood. And in those stories, the guy getting the girl is the default assumption. It would appear that these tropes now apply to a gay man's coming of age, which, if true, seems pretty groundbreaking. Probably to the chagrin of anti-Bylers, accepting yourself as a gay person is not simply about looking inward and hugging yourself. It's about going out and getting some. In other words, Mike isn't safe. Exhibit X. Gay sexual innuendos. Yes, I know the exhibit letter. There's a controversial theory in the Byler community called Hosegate, stemming from a shot in season 4 where Mike is filling a pizza dough freezer with a water hose that he's holding in a peculiar position. And it's immediately followed by a shot where Will is looking at Mike. Draw whatever conclusions as you will, and think dirty. And when I first saw this, I was like, huh? But after thinking about it, I was like, okay, that was peculiar and unnecessary, but to convey what was being conveyed. And this is a show that hasn't been prudish about sexual themes.
How was the pullout?
It's had shots like these, where some bottle is placed in front of Murray's crotch. Or this next shot I'm about to show, and keep in mind that yellow is associated with Will in the Byler blue-yellow color theory. When Mike is looking for a D&D player, a yellow explosion ejects from Mike's crotch area. This is a dick show. But a section of Byler fans jumped on people who pointed out Hosegate, saying it was sexualizing minors and overanalyzing things, sounding exactly like the homophobes and puritanical hypocrites who attack the Byler fandom. So it would seem that the Stranger Things writers followed that Hosegate controversy and said, hold my pipe. We're now about to get into what I'm calling Pipegate, where they seem to have challenged themselves to see how many gay sexual innuendos they can fit into a single scene. To be fair, I think I was clued in to Pipegate by a YouTube thumbnail, but I think I would have found this during my usual rewatch. First, some background before this particular scene. Back in episode 1, we see Will seeing Vicky and Robin kiss, and he drops a Coke can, which explodes. Bursting soda cans is often used as a metaphor for sex.
All right.
Call before you show up. Not that.
Then in episode 3, when Will asks Robin, how do you know someone wants to date? Robin describes a snowball becoming an avalanche. So again, this theme of something building up and getting bigger, wanting to burst out and explode when discussing gay sexuality. In episode 4, in the radio station, when Mike and Will are talking, Robin blurts out, dick. And it immediately cuts back to them.
All before anyone notices they're gone.
Dick.
What?
Sorry, did I say that out loud? I thought I was talking in my head, but...
Clearly teasing Byler. And Robin pointing out that she didn't know she said it out loud. The meta implication is that it was an unspoken thought of Mike and Will. As well as a wink and a nudge to all the viewers, the many viewers who noticed it and said, what you're thinking in your head, might as well say it out loud because it's right. Then Robin later says,
I like dick.
And we soon after see a shot of Mike and Will having a shared look. Not their only shared look in this episode, and right after an episode where it was pointed out this is something you want to look for. So now let's move on to that leaking pipe. Mike and Will were trying to stop a leaking pipe in the bathroom so that the kids could escape without drawing attention. Let's start with the fact that this entire Byler scene was completely unnecessary, except maybe to make Will wet for the final shots. Anything could have gotten the attention of the soldiers and created time pressure for them to get the kids out, such as that snitch girl discovering Lucas pulling a kid down into the hole. This is up there with the season 4 scene of Mike being made to eat symbolically gay fruit on pizza as being completely unnecessary, but to show gay subtext. For the next things I'm about to say, it will help for you to think as dirty as possible, which is completely valid given how puerile the writers are being throughout all of this. All right, someone yells, did you finally hit dick? Hit the dick. Yep. Mike says, let's just hope it's not too hard. Lucas says, if it is, I'll soften it. Mike says, let's hope it's not too hard. A reference to the fact that sometimes guys have trouble hiding their romantic attraction to somebody. And this is said by Mike of all people. Lucas says, he'll soften it. Lucas isn't interested in dick. Lucas and Mike have vertical thrusts with their tools. Mike's thrust causes a pipe to be ready to burst, which is, okay, an innuendo that in order to stay monetized, I probably shouldn't vocalize. Now we have a leaking pipe and pressure building up. And I gotta say, if Byler is endgame, then the idea of preventing leaks is a wink and nudge to the entire Byler community, who have been sleuthing for several years now, with the showrunners struggling to prevent leaks of this Byler plot twist for years. Now, Mike and Will are in the bathroom in a room called Dick, holding on to a vertical pipe, phallic symbol, and holding hands in this crazy situation. And they're trying to keep the pipe from exploding, which parallels the romantic and, dare I say, sexual tension. And this is liquid trying to burst out and might get out of control, like soda bursting out of a can, like a snowball building up into an avalanche, previous references to gay earlier in the season. Then Mike yells at Will, well, what do you know? A Google search shows that jacket is slang for a condom. for obvious reasons, along with Raincoat. And this whole scenario is about Mike and Will trying not to draw attention while they're doing something illegal in a bathroom. Many of you know where I'm about to go with this, but men's bathrooms are historically places where men who are gay and otherwise meet for anonymous sex. My Googling uncovered that there are websites that allow people to share information on where to find each other and give locations star ratings. Now, if any of you think that this is reaching, then why are cast members giggling during the table read?
Water spits out of the sink pipe right into Mike's face. Mike and Will are both frantically working together to repair the leak.
They seem to be catching on to the subtext too. And I don't think the cast knows about whether Byler will be endgame at the point of this table read, but they sure are acting like they want it to be. That was Pipegate. Speaking of someone being key to get something out of you, let's talk about Exhibit Y. Mike was key to unlocking Will's powers. In the big ending scene, Vecna is taunting Will with memories of when Will was grieving the loss of Mike. Times in his life when a young Will decided that his childhood dream of spending the rest of his life playing D&D with Mike was stupid, and deciding that he will never express his love for him. One could say that his empowerment arc is about moving on and finding love within himself instead of from Mike. But as I hinted at earlier, that's not what we see. In the big moment at the end of Sorcerer, Will saves 3 people, yes. But at every point possible, the show makes clear that it was Mike at the forefront of his mind when he finds his power. The moment he has his revelation is when a Demogorgon is about to kill Mike, and the first memory he thinks of is meeting Mike. Then we get to Robin's speech, and we need to remember here that these are not the only words Will was thinking about. Behind all this is what Mike said too. Mike told him that he might be a sorcerer who could do exactly this, tap into the hive mind. This is only a continuation of the dynamic from previous seasons. Will himself said in the van confession under the guise of L that Mike uplifts him, makes him not feel like a freak, that he's not a mistake, that he's better for being different.
And that gives her the courage to fight on.
We remember this previous conversation.
Maybe that's good. Good. Just think about it, Will. You're like a spy now. A super spy.
Will sees his connection with the Upside Down as a curse, but Mike sees it as part of what makes him amazing. In the field scene, right before they talk, Joyce says this.
Sometimes people need someone to believe in them. And they can do amazing things.
And it cuts immediately to Mike and Will. Mike is the person who believes in Will that he can do amazing things. This is Mike being the heart. Mike, when he's with Elle, feels insecure with Elle because she's a superhero who he thinks doesn't need him. But with Will, Mike's belief in him is literally what makes him a superhero. We love Robin, and her speech was vital. But Mike's words were important too, and they came from Will's best friend since childhood, who's the love of his life. And the show makes sure that Mike is the first one Will saves. This all shows how central Mike is to Will. And it's canon that their love, platonic, romantic, what have you, was key to defeating the Demogorgons this time. And there will be a reckoning to come. Exhibit Z, Mike and Will's last looks that conclude Volume 1. This is Mike's expression looking at Will. This is not Joyce's expression. She has shock and concern. This, on the other hand, is something else. Admiration, yes, but we've seen this look before from Mike, and dare I say that this look is hungrier? And let's be real, Will was hot. There are people thirsting for Will on the internet, and yet still people get away with saying that Mike doesn't want Will here? Like, be for real. And I found this comment online, but the rules of cinematography dictate here that when we see Will, we're actually looking at Will from Mike's point of view. So let's apply the if Will were a girl test. Will uses superpowers to save Mike's life, and then looks directly at him afterward. And since recording this, I noticed another detail. The soundtrack reflects Mike's heavy breathing while we look at Will. Is it heteronormativity the only thing making people not see the potential here? Are we witnessing Mike's biggest gay realization moment of all? If there is any gay in him, and if he ever doubted his feelings before, there are no doubts now. And Will just saved his life. If they were flirty before, can you imagine what's coming? And if Byler's endgame and there's banter, I totally see Will teasing Mike being into superpowered chicks. And let's add the army jeep behind him blinking its lights in Will's direction. Isn't this suggesting that Mike's car, which in literature historically is suggestive of male sexual interest, shall we say, facing Will's direction? And this is how Mike looks at Will now, not knowing that Will tried to flirt with him, and not knowing about the painting lie, that Will loves him and sacrifices happiness for him. And this is how Mike already feels about him? Isn't this how a snowball becomes an avalanche? And then conversely, let's look at Will's look. The show establishes where Will and Mike are related to each other in this scene. Will is looking directly at Mike. Talk about a shared look. The episode ends with this too. Is this the look of a man who's decided to just accept himself and give up on Mike? Or someone who's finally beginning to accept his own sexuality? And, dare I say, his right to hunger for someone of the same sex? Mike isn't safe. And I don't think Mike minds it either. Wherever you stand on Byler, you have to admit after this and the field scene, at minimum, that Mike really admires Will. And that this will play out. And admit that if they wanted to do a Will is in love with his best friend who doesn't like him back arc, they probably would have clarified Mike's feelings by the end of season 4. And this is not clarifying that he's straight at all. And if we consider that this is a mid-season finale, and you generally want to end such moments, especially if there's no dialogue, with visual hints of what's to come, this closes with two boys staring into each other's eyes. In a scene where each stepped forward and became a hero, Mike the Brave and Will the Sorcerer, because the other believed in him. Isn't this the future? Exhibit AA. Yes, this is what we do in law when we run out of letters. So much subtext. I haven't given an exhibit letter to non-diegetic evidence before. That evidence that's only significant outside the universe of the narrative, stuff like symbols, Easter eggs, and so on. But it's so significant that we continue to get subtextual evidence in the last season, with the creators still not having dismissed Byler Endgame, that I think they collectively deserve their own exhibit letter. Because why put them in? The thing about Easter eggs is that if they're definite enough and of sufficient quantity, there's no other explanation for them other than Byler is happening. Because they're not obvious enough to effectively rope in more LGBT plus viewers. Because if they're actually queer baiting with Byler here, then the only reason to put in so many symbolic and subtextual clues would be malice and cruelty to LGBT plus people. Which is hard to believe, given that cast and creator statements and the narrative of the show itself establish that this show sides with the outcasts, with minorities, and the marginalized. So I hereby incorporate by reference all my previous non-diegetic evidence from previous videos, a handy lawyer's shortcut. And we have this stuff that I'm about to talk about from the newest volume, in order of appearance. We have this sunset for Mike and Elle, traditionally a romantic lighting technique. However, as I said, it's ominous when coupled with their dialogue. Mike said, with Vecna gone, what can stop us? Like, really? You don't say that unless you're planting a future development. And it also suggests that it's not Vecna, it's not a monster, it's not one of them dying that would stop them from being together, but something outside of that. This next thing is something I confess not having found myself, but it took an eagle-eyed Byler to find. And everyone was yelling to me about it in my comment section saying, how come you didn't mention this? Come on, I'm not looking for it, I'm trying to avoid other people's theories. And you probably found it because you read it, didn't find it yourself. Leave me alone and calm down. Remember Mike's bedroom from season 4, where he has a peculiar one-way sign pointing into his closet? Clearly suggestive of going into a gay closet, and also other things in his room, including posters of muscular men. Well, when his dad faces the Demogorgon and it throws him through a wall, it knocks him into Mike's bedroom. We can tell because of the buffed male dragon poster. But what's notable is that Ted is thrown through Mike's closet. Mike's closet door is smashed open. This was such a specific choice. There were many other vertical surfaces to throw Ted through, and they chose Mike's closet. Now, I note that Ted is probably not himself personally involved in the process of Mike coming out. He already had his meme-worthy send-off fighting with a golf club and is exercising his superpower of being unconscious. But yes, deliberate symbolism that Mike is gay or bi. You know what I mean. Next, we have the rainbow imagery that is everywhere this season.
I defeated Vecna's lead acolyte by casting prismatic spray.
Now, we already had a rainbow reveal with Will's gay self-acceptance, but there are 4 episodes left, so what's next? Sure, there could be a theme this season that I pointed out of rejecting conformity and being who you are. There's an episode titled Escape from Camazotz, the hive mind planet from A Wrinkle in Time. Lucas talked about needing everyone in the party to work together. The rainbow symbolizes this, including the idea that Lucas conveyed that everyone in the party is needed, including possibly our 3 superheroes now. Everyone has different strengths that contribute to a stronger whole. But the obvious association with rainbows is gay, and with half a season left, this gay season can get gayer. And then we have blue and yellow swings. Now, the blue and yellow color theory has long existed among Bylers, where yellow is associated with Will and blue with Mike, based on the colors that they wear and their bedrooms throughout the show. And we also have this particular line from season 3.
When blue and yellow meet in the west, and blue meets yellow in the west.
It's a theory that I'm guessing wasn't originally intended, but the fandom took it up and the show has run with it. What finally won me over to the blue-yellow color theory was the magically appearing Byler bouquet in the final shots of season 4. Well, anyway, if you had told me a month ago that season 5 would have a flashback of young Mike and Will meeting for the first time on blue and yellow swings, I would have told you that you probably were getting your hopes too high and that the Duffer Brothers probably wouldn't have pulled something so clearly straight out of a Byler fanfic. It makes me think that our dream that Mike and Will will have their first kiss set to music from David Bowie or Queen isn't too much to hope for after all. So yes, blue and yellow swings. Even the swings themselves are blue. And I don't know if those were a thing in the 70s and 80s. I grew up in the 80s and all the swings I saw were made of black rubber. And Mike and Will wear blue and yellow in this flashback. And we can take the metaphor further. In this clip, Will wears a blue jacket, foreshadowing that Mike is Will's protector, and jumps off of a blue swing. Mike lets Will fly. And the entire swing set itself, yellow poles and blue swings, is needed for them to both fly. Then Will's wizard outfit incorporates both yellow and blue, emphasizing that Will can be a sorcerer when he incorporates Mike into his life. So here's our final list of Byler exhibits so far. Quite impressive if you ask me, and if Byler ends up not being endgame, then this queer bait would be diabolical. Now I'll talk about predictions for Byler in the last episodes, update my Bylermeter, and make one last point. Predictions. So, how can the Duffer Brothers develop Byler with 4 episodes left? First, you might enjoy my 16 ways Stranger Things can pull off a Mike-Will romance video, link in the description. It's an hour long. Now, the window for some theories to happen has passed, but I've realized that that's okay. In it, I focus on what the writers need to consider to get the audience to see, understand, and cheer for Byler, and 16 ways they could do that. Here, I'll begin with some things that even Byler skeptics have to admit are very likely. First, Will has accepted himself, and he knows that Robin knows that he's gay, and almost certainly knows that she knows that he likes Mike. This is set up for more bonding scenes between the two of them as Will tries to figure out what to do. Even if there's no more one-on-one scenes between these two, he has the comfort and confidence of having another gay person in the group that he can relate to and come to. Again, Mike is not safe. Second thing is that Will comes out to Mike. It might be to the group, it might be to him individually, who knows. This is Will's arc this season. Remember, it's almost certain that Mike does not know Will is interested in him. But it will prompt a reckoning in how Mike feels towards Will. And remember, I've argued that if they wanted to have an arc where Will is rejected by his best friend, who still accepts Will, and Will learns to move on, then they wouldn't have saved it for these last 4 episodes. They would have resolved it long ago. Next, the home movies that we saw that were part of Will's big moment were of Mike, Joyce, and Jonathan. They're at the forefront of Will's life, and Will is the central character this season. With Jonathan, they're probably going to explore his relationship with Nancy. So almost certainly, the love that Will feels for Mike and Joyce, and vice versa, will lead to some of the biggest dramatic moments of season 5. There will be death scares and sacrifice scares, and the home movies that we saw at least some of earlier might replay during them. Before I go into specific scenarios, I want to point out that there's really only 2 things that are needed to convince the audience to accept Byler. After watching some reaction videos to the field scene, it became clear to me that most of the audience was successfully misdirected by Mike's love confession to Elle at the end of season 4 that seemed to settle the question of Mike's romantic loyalties once and for all. It's the text and its placement at the end of season 4 and its apparent role in giving Elle strength to escape the vines gives it weight. My first Byler video unraveled that in detail, which I quickly summarized in my top 6 Byler bangers earlier. But unraveling the painting lie can undo all of that. It completely recontextualizes how viewers are supposed to read Mike's thoughts in the last part of season 4. The Cyrano trope shows that Mike's true love is Will. Second, we just need a montage. There is a lot of material over 4.5 seasons now that will be looked at completely differently if it is made clear that Mike loves Will. It will show intention and that this was planned for a long time and that the clues were in plain sight and you missed them. As I said in a recent video, it will be like a blurry picture suddenly becoming clear. And this new fact that Mike loves Will makes everything before it make sense. It would give a far better explanation for why Mike had trouble telling Elle he loved her in season 4 than what he told her in the show. It would be like beholding a completed puzzle, where any other configuration, any other explanation for these things makes no sense compared to the truth. And that's it. Easy peasy. Now I'll talk about 4 paths that the writers could travel down that could do these 2 things, and none of them are mutually exclusive to each other. First is that Elle clocks Byler. I pointed out before that Elle recognizing and supporting Byler happening would be a surefire way to get the general audience to accept Byler as well. Let's say that in the very next episode, the gang realizes they need to figure out where the 12 children are. Will is the only person who could apparently ascertain that because he saw them while connected to the hive mind. Maybe Will cannot tap into it again because he's unconscious or not physically close to a Demogorgon. However, we know that Elle can visit people's memories. Perhaps while plumbing Will's memories, she sees past scenes. Perhaps this could be the occasion for a Byler montage. Particularly, and this would be a key thing, I think, and a likely thing, what if Elle sees Will's van confession, where he gives the painting to Mike, credits Elle, and confesses his own feelings under the guise of Elle? It would make Elle reassess everything, including the fact that it was Will's words, his feelings, that prompted Mike to give a love confession to her. She would see that Mike actually has feelings for Will, and that Will was so selfless as to put her and Mike above himself. Maybe Elle then goes into Mike's memories, maybe prompted by that or some other circumstance. Here's where I need to mention that there is lost footage that was taken from season 1 where Mike bikes home after discovering Will's supposed dead body.
It was like one of my favorite things to do. After the fire truck where we find Will's body, there was a take that we shot where I was riding down this trail, and it was just like one single tear fell, and I like wiped it away and just kept riding. And it was like a huge like golf cart track shot. And you guys ended up cutting it.
In fact, Elle seeing that could be the very first clip of the Byler montage that makes the audience realize that Mike has loved Will all along and has just never understood it. And upon seeing this, Elle will understand. It will explain for her Mike's struggle to say that he loved her in season 4. And she would be relieved. The reason was not her, it was Mike's fear and his struggle to come out. And she is a good-hearted person, and she would want the best for both of them. She would totally be generous, and she would want to return the favor to Will that Will had extended to her, and let Will be with the love of his life. Of all the other characters in the show, Elle would probably be the biggest Byler of all. Number 2, Will being in danger forces Mike to confront his own feelings. We've seen in the show, it's established what happens to Mike when Will is in danger. It triggers leader Mike, protector Mike, and he becomes absolutely driven. In season 1, his determination was parallel to Will's own mother. Mike believed Will was alive, even knowing less than Joyce did, and drove the group forward to find him. In season 2, he did everything he could when Will was possessed and stayed by his side and saved his life. As I said before, Will is probably key to defeating Vecna, and so that means, for Vecna, Will is his #1 target. William, you in danger, girl. I think I can fairly check off my central bingo box now. Will is in danger. Now, I thought that the danger of Vecna targeting Will while he's sleeping would prompt Mike and Will to share a room and, trigger the proximity trope. But I now realize that the sun's about to rise on November 6th and big events are about to happen, so I don't know about that anymore. But regardless, we now have a problem. The very thing that could advance the party's plans, using Will's powers, puts him in danger, because Robin's dialogue establishes that he can only tap into the hive mind by being close to one of the monsters.
You've never been this close to the hive mind before. I mean, that thing was like feet away. I think that's what this was, an overload. You jacked right into the goddamn control center.
And we also know that Vecna would like to target Will, harm him, and possibly even possess him when he is connected to the hive mind. So how are they going to find out where the kids are? You can totally see an argument where Joyce and Mike are dead set on Will not using his powers. Joyce and Will's argument earlier in the season is set up for this. We might even have a callback to this season 3 scene where Mike blurted out his love for Elle when arguing that the party shouldn't be using Elle's powers.
You're treating her like some kind of machine when she's not a machine, and I don't want her to die looking for the flayed when they've obviously vanished off the face of the earth. So can we please just come up with a new plan, because I love her and I can't lose her again.
And given that Mike might have just had his hardest gay realization moment of all, during all this, Mike might suddenly realize, like an avalanche, that his feelings for Will right now are feelings he's never felt for Elle. And this also can set up conflict between Mike and Will, conflict and arguments that can bring their feelings to the surface. Perhaps one of Noah's many scenes with Finn this season will be the biggest argument they've ever had, and it'll be over whether Will should use his powers. And he's particularly driven to help the children and doesn't want what happened to him to happen to others.
How does that get us closer to Holly? She's in there, Mom, all alone. I know what that's like. I won't just leave her there.
He might remember or be made to remember his own memories of being abducted himself, resurfacing all of his trauma. Will has emerged to be a leader this season also. This show has established that Will's ready to sacrifice himself for others, and Mike, so used to being the leader and telling Will what to do, might find that Will says fuck it and defying him. These two had many heart-to-heart conversations in season 4, but they were all low stakes. Their lives weren't on the line, and still there was simmering romantic tension bubbling beneath the surface. But those could pale next to their conversations this season, where the stakes are so high and neither wants to lose the other forever. Either they're going to scream at each other or kiss, one or the other, or both. And of course, how are they going to kill Vecna when Will is attached to the hive mind? And what if Mike is the one who has that realization, just as he did in season 2? Will he share what he's figured out with Will and the others? Or will he do something reckless and sacrificial instead to avoid that having to be the solution? As you can see, endless possibilities. Number 3, Will comes out to Mike, which also can force Mike to confront his own feelings. I talked about Elle clocking Byler, but there's a fair chance, given that this is Will's coming out journey, that Will clocks Byler and sees the signs that Robin listed. Even before the events at the end of Sorcerer, he's been taking his own initiative, and now he has resolved to not be so goddamn scared. So Will possibly comes out to Mike, and Will might even make a move. Which, of course, this being a dramatic show, will not lead to what Will wants. Mike could be clearly uncomfortable, afraid, might even reject him. It could be another mislead to the straights. While we LGBT+ people would see, if it's done right, the signs that, oh, his response is compatible with someone in the closet.
Elle's not stupid. It's not my fault you don't like girls.
We might then shift to Mike's coming out arc. It could coincide with path number 2 and dealing with Will being in danger. And through a montage or revealing the painting lie, perhaps Elle explores Mike's memories. Mike's journey could relatively quickly play out for the audience. And Elle, or Robin, could play an understanding and supportive role. And of course, there's path number 4, Vecna tormenting Will. Vecna would prey on Will's weaknesses, and Byler happening could be key to the A-plot and whether Will can find it in himself to control the hive mind and defeat Vecna. My original theory that Byler would be the solution to Will feeling like a mistake, that he's not worthy of love, arguably was solved by the events of Sorcerer. But as I said, those feelings don't just go away, and Will has a way to go before he's finally victorious. Will's power is literally fueled by his gay self-acceptance. But as his flashbacks show, he's only able to do this because of his connections to the people he loves and who love him. To date, he only has power over the hive mind when thinking about and expressing his love to others. And it's telling that Vecna's visions here that prompt Will's sense of weakness were memories of losing Mike. This is Vecna's roadmap. As I said, coming out for Will is a process. Accepting yourself is one thing. It's another thing to act on those feelings and be okay with yourself for doing that. One intriguing possibility is that Will's powers are a metaphor for gay sexuality. And if Will has a villain arc, this show could explore the shame society imposes on queer people who actually act on their sexuality. In this case, Will wanting to have a romantic relationship with Mike. In my Will Gains Powers videos, I make reference to Nightmare on Elm Street 2, a 1980s slasher, where a gay-coded young man is possessed by Freddy Krueger and made to murder a gay man, as well as a classmate he has a crush on. It's a metaphor for the conflicted feelings one has being in the gay closet, attacking and trying to kill something within yourself. Now, what I'm about to propose admittedly treads close to perpetuating the depraved homosexual trope, but it would be a way to portray the feelings of shame and self-hate that society imposes on queer people. To avoid the problems of this trope, it would need to be clear that being gay is not evil, and make clear that this wrong idea is being used by Vecna to torment Will. If anyone thinks Will's arc of self-acceptance is over, then a glance at the internet and seeing the homophobia out there against Will actually acting on his feelings should tell us it's not. Online, I see people accept Will's self-acceptance arc, but they draw the line against Will actually making a move on Mike. Having already decided that Mike is straight, and with varying degrees of hostility and homophobia toward Will. Like this comment saying that if Will were to hit on Mike, he'd be a creepy gay. Which I have to say, is a messed up thing to say. If it ruins a friendship, it's because of homophobia, not anything Will have done. A homophobia which this commenter seems to have internalized. And then there are people accusing Will of being a so-called homewrecker, getting in the way of the Mike and Elle relationship when he built that house. I've seen people ridicule Will for the move he made in the field, echoing the same self-hating words he yelled at himself when he destroyed Castle Byers, calling himself stupid. But his feelings are nothing to be ashamed of, and the show has made clear, unless you have pre-decided that Mike is straight, despite all the evidence, that Mike has sent mixed signals to Will that Mike is interested in him. Will thought of something in the hospital when Robin mentioned a snowball becoming an avalanche. How would they all feel if a girl had sacrificed her feelings so that Mike and Elle could be together, and then shyly and tentatively explored simply finding out whether Mike likes her back? Would there be the same level of hostility to Will? No. And meanwhile, Will's love for Mike literally saves Mike's life. People are hostile to Will and to fans of the Bylership for just hoping he will find romance with Mike, saying things like this.
Listen, Mike is Will's first love. Absolutely, I agree, and that's an important thing. But the first person that you fall in love with or become infatuated by never ends up being your endgame. They are just part of your story, part of the catalyst that helps you understand who you are.
Completely blind to the double standards they're applying, this statement obviously applies equally to Mike and Elle. Not to mention the smug attitudes I see thinking of him as a simp, as weak because he desires Mike. Not only reflecting the anti-gay view that if you're a guy who's interested in another guy, that inherently makes you embarrassingly weak, but also dismissing the strength and courage it takes for a gay person to disregard the many things standing in their way to pursue love that straight people never have to. The hostility and ridicule is all rooted in homophobia. It's okay for Will to be a safe gay person, you see, who doesn't actually act on his gay feelings. And it's why, goddammit, I want Will to make a move on Mike and for this show to say it's okay. The shame society imposes on Will for making a move on Mike, or heck, just thinking such thoughts, that is perpetuated by problematic fans like these, is ripe material for Vecna to make Will feel shitty about himself. Now, remember what I said about a villain arc being a way the show could explore through metaphor the conflicted feelings a person who grows up from abuse will have towards wielding power? That you're an awful person or selfish simply for asserting yourself? Well, what about the conflicted feelings a queer person will have that society makes them feel for simply acting on their sexuality? That they're being selfish, shameful, and wrong. Vecna still has his MO of preying on people's weaknesses, and he can make them see things that don't exist. In season 4, Vecna made it appear that Lucas was saying horrible things to Max.
Maybe it is good he takes you. Maybe it's for the best. It's going to be you that breaks the world.
What if he does the same with Mike? What if Will comes out to Mike and Vecna makes it look like Mike responds in the worst, most homophobic way possible, and possibly spurns him as a friend, making Will feel ashamed and hating himself? Will would then feel in multiple ways that he's a mistake, and his having powers would be a metaphor for having all these feelings. Or what if Vecna possesses Will and makes him harm Mike or even apparently kill Mike? Something that makes him hate himself and takes away his power over the hive mind. Will might be driven to decide that the only way to save the people he loves is to sacrifice himself. Remember, think like a supervillain. If Will is your main obstacle, how would you get him out of the way? As I've said in previous videos, past dialogue foreshadows that Mike and Will being a team and their love for each other could be key to defeating Vecna. Mike proposed and Will agreed that they be a team. They resolved that they would kill Vecna together. Meanwhile, Will has called Mike the Heart, and that he makes Will feel better for being different. You see what I'm getting at here? Vecna's tormenting of Will might convince him that his powers, which literally flow from his love, make him a mistake. And perhaps Mike being the heart, confessing his love, is what finally makes Will understand and embrace what makes him different, and gives him control over it. Will would learn that his wrong, embarrassing, stupid love for Mike isn't something to be ashamed of. Rather, it is beautiful. And on that note, I'd like to reintroduce my pet theory, Wallgate, that I've talked about in a previous video. Here's some fan art by Kadavna and Scapegods of Tumblr. Not made for this theory, it's just Byler fan art that was particularly appropriate. But I only placed it at 10% before the season started. I go into detail at the end of my 16 Ways Byler Can Happen video, link in the description. I did a number of takes and I couldn't put it in a nutshell, this complex theory, but it culminates with Wilk realizing that he is loved, which is key to defeating the Upside Down, with the lyrics of David Bowie's Heroes being perfect for the occasion. Now that the season confirms that the poster of the movie The Wall is in the radio station, and that the Upside Down is bounded by a wall, and destroying that wall could be key to destroying the Upside Down, I now raise my Wallgate meter to 35%. A few more random predictions. Dustin refers to a D&D spell called Prismatic Spray, which is a rainbow spell. And now that Will is established to have powers and that it's powered by love, perhaps he does something that directly refers to the spell. Also, Mike, Will, and Holly are the 3 characters, I believe, in this show who have actual D&D characters named after themselves. Mike the Brave, Holly the Heroic, and Will the Wise. Possibly foreshadowing a story arc involving specifically these 3. Where their D&D names become important, we already have seen Will the Wise. And this dovetails with the book A Wrinkle in Time, which has 3 main characters who are kids. 2 of them are siblings, and 1 of them is a love interest for the older sibling. Also, 1 of them gets absorbed into a hive mind and harms his loved ones, so maybe my villain arc theory for Will. And a confession of love snaps the character out of it, out of a hive mind of conformity, Camazotz. These could all be foreshadowing Byler. Alright, let's update my Bylermeter. After episode 3, I put the likelihood of Byler Endgame at 88%. You're probably guessing after this big video that it's at 99, even 100%. But to be honest, after watching Volume 1, I was thinking of lowering it. Because now they can point to an ostensibly satisfactory gay empowerment arc to stave off accusations that they queerbaited. It wouldn't be valid, but still. And as I said at the start, I thought that if Byler were endgame, they would have made it more obvious by the end of Volume 1, for the reasons I described. Because why continue to hide it? It's not like 2022 when cluing people in then would have invited speculation and the foregone conclusion that Byler would be endgame years before the final season. But as I also say, viewers in the end will want what the characters want if it's sufficiently established. And I think I've made a full case that it can be established. And I might have underestimated the Duffer Brothers' ego. They're daring to preserve a seemingly straight character being gay or bi as a plot twist as part of the final arcs of the show. They'd be able to say that they out-Sixth Sensed the Sixth Sense. Yes, Byler has been 100% prepared, but what about the possibility that what has been prepared is for Byler to live on as subtextual? Here's Chris and Gordy from the classic 80s film Stand By Me. That all the subtle clues, the mountain of subtle clues that we've seen, were intended to be developed in fan fiction. But there's been so much apparent intentionality in demonstrating how Mike and Elle don't work as a couple while Mike and Will do, as I cover in my videos, especially part 2, that it's hard to see Byler not being canon. And if you want Byler to just live on in fan fiction and subtext, then you still want to dispel speculation, have the creators make a clear statement that Byler is not going to happen, in order not to be guilty of queerbait. Plus, Will Byers has said he's never going to fall in love. There's a problem of having the show end with the gay boy being the one main character who doesn't find love. In a show with many improbable things happening, it sends a message to young queer people that this is your future. Even if Will were to survive, for him to have this ending would echo the bury your gays trope by again denying LGBT plus people a happy ending. And I think Byler theorists have made clear that if Will were a girl, given all the evidence and all the tropes, then Byler endgame would be completely obvious. Not delivering on Byler would literally actively make everyone not just doubt their media literacy, but also the existence and validity of gay love. And it would open up all the passionate, intelligent people in the Byler fandom to unfair attack. We would still be right, but this would be terribly irresponsible on the part of the creators. It would mean that all the Wills out there who have been part of this fandom, who have followed all the evidence, who are seeking their own courage to go for a Mike or a Vicky, will be told that they were wrong, that they should not dare to love, which would be the opposite message from what the Duffers seem to want to send. And of course, Byler is just the more interesting, more memorable, more powerful story that furthers the show's central themes. Add to that all the subtextual stuff that wouldn't exist but for Byler Endgame. Blue and yellow, busting open Mike's closet, bursting pipes, hello! It keeps my Bylermeter hard at 95%. Hopefully it's not too hard. I'm also putting at 60% the chance that we'll hear David Bowie's Heroes, because that's what Mike and Will bring out in each other. Let's review everything going for it. I focused on new evidence today, but I incorporate all previous evidence. All the evidence in my hours of video and videos by many outstanding creators still stands. We have the painting lie. Mike's big confession was based on a lie, the Cyrano trope. Nuff said. We had the signs to look for if someone likes you conversation. Come on, that has to play out. There's just been more focus on Mike and Will than there has been with Mike and Elle. If you're setting up emotional stakes and having death scares for the latter half of the season, they're doing that much more for Mike and Will than for Mike and Elle. The home movies are setting up a montage to end all montages in terms of Byler. They now literally have the scene where Mike did what, in his words, was the best thing he's ever done, which in fact might be the triggering line of dialogue for said montage. And they might have shot more flashback scenes that we haven't seen. This damn thing's been built up for 5 seasons, and this would be not only the best gay romance, but the best childhood friends to lovers romance ever. We now have 2 mirrored stories where Mike and Will point to their meeting each other as their most precious memory. What we've seen does not reflect Noah's statement that most of the scenes were with Finn. And they've set up that, if anything, it's Will's relationship with Mike that can make him go through an emotional roller coaster, something which he'll definitely go through this season. Then, co-creator Sean Levy said in an interview that Finn Wolfhard, Mike's actor, took on a lot of weight as an actor this season.
In season 5, the performances are so nuanced. And particularly as you'll see, I mean, we ask Finn to carry a lot of weight, and we ask Noah to carry a lot of critical emotional content.
And we haven't seen much of that from Mike in the first 4 episodes. Sean Levy, in fact, is directing episodes 6 and 7. It might be speaking of the challenges he as a director placed on Finn. So my Bylermeter is high, yet I still see the other possibility. It's so nerve-wracking. This must have been what it was like to be hyped up for Byler and then watching Volume 2 of Season 4. An initial wave of disappointment and grief, followed by a lot of realizations and moments, and a renewed confidence. My optimistic side also notes that every season of Stranger Things has been gayer than the last. We now have fucking rainbows everywhere. Well, how about each episode this season? Episode 4 was much gayer than the previous ones. It's like we've been witnessing a snowball becoming an avalanche. Robin told us that for a reason, right? Now for something I saved for the end. The childhood theme, demonstrated by Will unlocking his powers by remembering his child self, is evidence that Byler will happen. It's an answer to the claim that they've already had a gay empowerment arc, so there's no need to have Byler. The theme of remaining your true self, the best part of you that you were as a child, points toward a story arc that the show has prepared for Mike, one that is resolved by Mike giving in to his love for Will. I think I need to begin by just playing a deleted section of my original Byler video that I had originally intended to include with it, but didn't. I didn't feel confident enough in it at the time. I was too goddamn scared. But as it turns out, it forecast the theme that the show is exploring. And there also might be another powerful story to be told through Mike and Will, about our right to retain the best parts of who we are, who we were as children. Mike and Will's relationship has coincided with their own arcs in this show of being told they must grow up. Mike had to throw away his toys because those are for kids. He told Will, "We're not supposed to play games for the rest of our lives. We're supposed to date girls." Will tore down Castle Byers. There's a famous quote from the Bible that says, "When I became a man, I put away childish things." And for Mike and Will, to become men, they lost the tender way they used to relate to each other. As children, we're at our most natural selves. We laugh, we play games, we're happy. We reach out and want connections with people regardless of race or gender. But love, you see, is only something you have with the opposite sex. You get married, buy a house, and you shut yourself in. We're taught to give up on the whole variety of meaningful ways to relate to a whole world of other people. An unequal society that teaches us to lower our expectations for how the world should be also affects us in this most personal of ways, teaching us to give up on our right to happiness at all. Season 5 might have Mike and Will revisit the childish things they put away. If they fall in love, then as two gay boys in Hawkins, there's clearly no point in trying to grow up anymore. They can define for themselves how they should act, even if that means playing D&D and Nintendo for the rest of their lives. They can rebuild Castle Byers and be who they used to be. The power of childhood to lover stories is that sense that we lost something in ourselves that we never should have lost in the first place, before society interfered and told us to stop dreaming, to stop being idealistic, to grow up. These stories resonate because so many of us are still that child inside, no matter how we might act or what we might say to ourselves, who rightfully wants and deserves more than what we've been given. The British author C.S. Lewis took the Bible quote and changed it to say, "When I became a man, I put away childish things, including the fear of childishness and the desire to be very grown up." There is a powerful story to be told here that can be told through Mike and Will, that you don't have to grow up and conform to what others tell you. You can be free. To this day, when I replay the flashbacks and Will's moment in Sorcerer, I get emotional. It goes to the deepest place in my heart. While the feeling of losing your childhood is a universal thing, it's particularly painful for LGBT plus people who feel like our childhood was robbed from us. This show is saying to dare to be that best part of yourself, dare to dream, dare to express your humanity. And as the ending of my first Byler video noted, to have no regrets. We only live once. And it's an emotional journey that, if Byler is real and Mike has been struggling with internalized homophobia, it's one that resonates more powerfully with Mike than for Will. Will's struggle with growing up was in our face, but Mike's decision to grow up and leave his childhood behind was more thorough and deeper. Season 2 showed him being forced to give away his toys. Season 3 marked a stark change in his character from who he was as a child. Before, he wasn't scared of showing his affection to Will, physically or otherwise. But by Season 3, he had convinced himself he couldn't do that anymore. It was time to leave childhood things behind and get girlfriends, and for him, it meant turning away from Will. We can all agree that Mike in Season 3 became a worse character. He was less of the heroic, sees a way forward, optimistic character and dreamer we had seen before, something we're starting to get glimmers of this season, since Will has reached him. At the time of the rain fight and when Will tore down Castle Byers, there were many in the GA who were sad for Will, but ultimately sided with Mike's side of the argument, the conventional wisdom that Will needed to grow up. And for many, this included giving up on his dream to be with Mike. This season, the Duffers seem to be saying, no, that's not what we meant. And in retrospect, this should have been clear. Mike in Season 4 was playing D&D again, and Lucas had his own arc of learning that he didn't want to fit in either. Conforming be damned, the Duffers are making clear that it's best to be yourself. Mike was a de facto main character of Season 1, but since then he's been increasingly sidelined. That might change in the back half of Season 5. We might see a return of Mike to main character status, not only via my theory that he takes military leadership of some of Hawkins, but also in the sense that there'll be a focus on his emotional arc as well, where he decides to embrace that side of himself that plays D&D, writes campaigns, has bold ideas, and is a leader. And the center of that journey will be what it has always been, Will. And I note here that this scene was not one of the 3 memories people recounted to Will in the shed. Maybe it serves double duty as part of a montage where Mike embraces this side of himself. As I say in Byler Part 2, Will is the one person that Mike doesn't feel insecure around, that he can be himself with. It was Will saying he's the heart that got him back on this road again this season. Mike might be confronted with the choice of whether to defy homophobia so he can be the best version of himself again. Further evidence that such an arc might happen for Mike is the fact that the original script for Sorcerer includes a particular flashback in it that we didn't see on the screen.
Belong in this world.
Mike tells him to grow up. Will destroys Castle Byers.
They belong in mine.
Mike tells Will to grow up, and we don't see that. It would have been completely on theme, but I think, at least my theory is that it was removed because it too explicitly would have telegraphed a future parallel arc for Mike. That was Mike's decision, not Will's. There are other reasons not to include it. Regardless, the main point is that it appears the writers had intended to put that before viewers because they intend to have Mike go through a similar arc as well. And coming back to Will, whatever breakthrough he just had at the end of Sorcerer, he still feels shame and stupid for clinging to his childhood dream of playing D&D with Mike for the rest of his life. That is a weak point that Vecna can take advantage of. Another clue that they'll develop this theme is that Vecna, when he's taunting Will, says that the kids were easy to mold because they were weak.
Do you know why I chose them? It's because they are weak in body and mind. The perfect vessels.
Implying that it was because they were children. But Will just tapped into something about being a child that made Will strong. We might have a child power arc in which Holly leads the other children in Camazotz in some daring plan characteristic of what kids would do against Vecna. On Mike and Will reclaiming their childhoods, I wrote about this a year ago on Tumblr in this post, link in the description. It's a theory I had that's centered on Castle Byers. Young Mike and Will must have spent a lot of time there as kids playing out stories that became their D&D games. When Dustin's actor, Gaten Matarazzo, read the script for the final episode, he called it a full circle moment. I'm sure there'll be several such moments, and probably one of them will be the core four playing D&D together. If Byler is endgame, we might have an epilogue where Mike and Will return to where Will destroyed Castle Byers and rebuild it together. And I called it Castlegate. It would be a fitting way to conclude their story. So, a couple final thoughts. This is a huge opportunity for the Duffer Brothers. If Byler doesn't happen, then 9 years of build-up for an amazing plot twist, for a groundbreaking gay childhood friends to lovers romance, and perhaps the best childhood friends to lovers story ever committed to film will have been squandered. We are not delusional. The only reason that claim has any power is heteronormativity and homophobia. I've been watching reaction channels lately of people with blinders on when it comes to these two. If Byler happens, it'll be so satisfying to see many people being forced to reassess their heteronormativity. The claim that Byler is unrealistic negates the experience of the many Mike Wheelers out there who struggle with the gay closet and try to fit in and date the opposite sex. It also subjects us, LGBT+ people, to a homophobic double standard. Straight people have unrealistic romances in fiction all the time. They're never told they're delusional when their stories are building up a childhood friends to lovers romance. And in fact, the idea of a slow burn romantic relationship is more realistic for queer people. For there are countless true stories of same-sex friends who were in love but didn't realize until years, sometimes decades later, sometimes after it was too late. Straight people dominate the real world and even our fictional stories. In this show about outcasts, we should be the focus for once, and we deserve happy endings too. Thank you for watching. If you're interested in more of my analysis and theories, browse my channel. I have my videos on Byler, of course, and also I've been reacting to and analyzing each episode of Stranger Things. I've been staying clear of spoilers and other people's theories, which I hope make my videos more enjoyable. In my reaction to Sorcerer, I have theories on the origin of the Upside Down, where the story can go from here, and updated death predictions. Of course, like and subscribe. My future reactions will come out about once per week. They'll be shortened for YouTube, and for early access to them, you can support my Patreon, where I also have full versions of my reactions and my post-analysis videos, and other exclusive reactions. So that's it. I've been Ronald, keeping it real and off the record.